Right now, somewhere on Earth, someone is watching football, a stadium packed with 80,000 people, a crowded bar, a tiny TV in a living room. It doesn't matter where you go, the game is everywhere. More than 4 billion people follow football, making it the most popular sport on the planet. But here's the strange part. For most of its history, the people in charge wanted it banned, not regulated, not improved, banned. And they tried over and over again. Yet somehow, football survived and eventually became bigger than anyone could have imagined. So how did that happen? Well, it starts with a version of football that was completely insane. Imagine a football match with no referees, no teams, no sidelines, no stadium. Now add a few hundred players. That's what football looked like in medieval England. Entire villages would play against other villages. The pitch could stretch for miles, through fields, through forests, across roads, even through rivers. The objective was simple. Get the ball to the other village, however you could. People shoved each other, dragged each other, tackled each other. Sometimes entire crowds got involved. Property was damaged, windows were smashed, farmers complained about destroyed crops, bones were broken, and in some cases, people even died. Modern football is a sport, this was closer to a riot, and somehow, people loved it. One of the earliest recorded football deaths happened in the year 1280. A man named William de Spalding was playing football in England. During the match, he collided with another player. That player happened to be carrying a dagger. The collision drove the blade into William's body, and he died. Imagine hearing that story today. A football match, a crowd of players, and somebody casually carrying a knife. It sounds ridiculous, but that's how different football was back then. There were no officials, no equipment checks, no governing body, no safety standards, just a giant crowd chasing a ball wherever it happened to go. And William wasn't the only tragedy connected to the game. Historical records describe serious injuries happening regularly. Players were trampled, crushed, thrown into ditches. Some games crossed rivers where people could easily drown. Others charged through crowded streets filled with obstacles. Modern football fans worry about yellow cards. Medieval football players had to worry about surviving the afternoon. And yet here's what's strange. The danger didn't push people away. It pulled them in. The more chaotic football became, the more communities gathered around it. It wasn't just entertainment, it was an event, something that broke the monotony of ordinary life in a world where ordinary life was genuinely hard. And strangely enough, the more dangerous football seemed to be, the more people wanted to play it. The game became so popular that English kings started panicking. King Edward II banned football in 1314. His reasoning was practical. The game was causing disturbances in the streets of London. Citizens were abandoning their duties. Noise and disorder were spreading through the city. He issued a formal proclamation. Football in public places was forbidden. Anyone caught playing could be imprisoned. Then another king banned it. Then another. Then another. 4 different kings tried to stop the same game. But why did none of it work? Was it because football was violent? Not exactly. Medieval England had bigger concerns. War. England depended heavily on archers. Young men were supposed to spend their free time practicing with longbows. The kingdom's military power depended on it. Imagine being a king. You need soldiers, you need archers, you need men who can fire arrows with deadly accuracy. Instead, every weekend they're running through muddy fields chasing a ball. To the kings, football wasn't entertainment. It was a distraction, a dangerous distraction, so they banned it again and again and again. None of it worked. People kept playing anyway. And that's what makes football different from most sports. Most sports are created by organizations. Football wasn't. Nobody invented football. Nobody owned football. It belonged to ordinary people, which meant there was nobody for the kings to shut down. Ban one village match and another appears somewhere else. Stop one crowd and another forms the following week. Football behaved less like a sport and more like an idea. And ideas are very difficult to outlaw, especially when everyone already loves them. For hundreds of years, football survived every attempt to stop it. Not because it was organized, but because it wasn't. For centuries, football existed without official rules. Every town played differently. Every school had its own version. Some allowed carrying the ball. Others didn't. Some allowed heavy tackling. Others banned it. You could travel a few miles and suddenly discover that football meant something completely different. And eventually that became a problem, because a game can't spread across an entire country if nobody agrees on how it's played. Then, in 1863, everything changed. A group of men gathered in a London tavern called the Freemasons' Arms. Their mission wasn't to invent football. Football already existed. Their mission was to finally decide what football actually was. After hours of arguments, debates, and disagreements, a new set of rules was created. No carrying the ball, no chaos, no confusion. For the first time, football had an official identity, and modern football was born. Not everyone agreed. Some clubs preferred a version that allowed players to carry the ball. Eventually, they split away. That version became rugby. A disagreement inside a meeting room would eventually create two completely different sports, both of which still exist today. Football had finally become organized, and nobody in that room realized what they had just started. At exactly the same time, Britain was changing. Factories were growing, cities were expanding, railways connected the country, millions of people were moving into urban areas, and suddenly workers had something they'd never really had before: regular free time. Before industrialization, most people worked every hour of daylight. Seasons dictated the rhythm of life. There was no such thing as a weekend, but factory work created schedules, shifts. And eventually, Saturday afternoons became free. Football was perfect. It was simple, cheap, easy to understand. All you needed was a ball. Soon, clubs appeared everywhere. Workers formed teams, neighborhoods formed rivalries, crowds gathered, leagues formed, and football stopped being a local game. It became a national obsession. People who spent all week working in factories suddenly had something to look forward to. A match on Saturday, a chance to support their team, a chance to celebrate or complain. Some things never change. Then Britain accidentally exported football to the rest of the world. Sailors carried it overseas. Workers introduced it to foreign cities. Engineers brought it to railway projects in South America and Africa. Merchants introduced it in ports across Asia. Wherever the British went, football followed, and people loved it. South America loved it. Europe loved it. Because football had one huge advantage over almost every other sport. Anyone could play. You didn't need expensive equipment. You didn't need special facilities. Sometimes you didn't even need shoes. In many places, children made footballs out of bundled cloth. A ball was enough. And that's one of the reasons football spread faster than almost any sport in history. The game belonged to everyone. Rich, poor, young, old. It didn't matter. If you had a ball, you could play. By the early 20th century, football had become international. The game needed a global organization. So in 1904, FIFA was created. 7 European nations signed the original agreement. At the time, few people could have predicted how influential it would become, because FIFA's biggest achievement was still decades away: the World Cup. The first World Cup took place in 1930. Uruguay hosted it. Only 13 teams participated. Compared to today, that sounds tiny, but it changed everything. For the first time, countries competed to prove who was the best on earth. National pride became attached to football, and once that happened, there was no turning back. The tournament itself was a gamble. Travel wasn't easy. Many teams spent weeks crossing oceans by ship just to compete. Some countries refused to participate because the journey was too long. Yet despite all the obstacles, the tournament worked. Uruguay won. And an entire nation celebrated for days. People cared. A lot. Because suddenly football wasn't just about clubs. It wasn't just about cities. It was about nations. One goal could make millions celebrate. One mistake could break an entire country's heart. Football had always been emotional. The World Cup turned those emotions up to maximum. And every 4 years, it grew larger. More teams, more viewers, more drama, until eventually it became the most watched sporting event on Earth. Then television arrived, and football exploded. Before television, football mostly belonged to people who could attend matches in person. You had to buy a ticket. You had to stand in the crowd. Television changed all of that overnight. Now anyone could watch. A local sport suddenly became global entertainment, and football stars became celebrities. Pelé, Maradona, Zidane, Messi, Ronaldo. Names recognized almost everywhere on Earth. Not many sports can create figures that famous. Football could. Then came the modern era. The era of giant stadiums, global audiences. Today, football is worth billions. Matches are broadcast to almost every corner of the planet. Technology tracks every pass. Clubs have fan bases spread across continents. Players are followed by hundreds of millions of people online. The scale is almost impossible to comprehend. What began as villages chasing a ball through muddy fields became one of the largest entertainment industries in human history. And yet something remarkable remains unchanged. The reason people love football, because underneath all the money, football is still incredibly simple. A ball, a goal, and the feeling that something unforgettable might happen in the next few seconds. That's it. That's the secret. The rules evolved, the stadiums evolved, but the feeling never changed. The medieval villagers chasing a ball through muddy fields, and the fans filling modern stadiums today. They're separated by hundreds of years, yet they're chasing the exact same thing: excitement, competition, that magical moment when the ball hits the back of the net. And for a few seconds, nothing else matters. That's why football survived every ban, every obstacle, every century, because long before football became the world's game, it was already impossible to stop. And that's the story of how a chaotic, dangerous village pastime became the most popular sport on Earth.